to Senate Transportation meeting. I'd ask all members and guests to please silence your phones. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Senator Berg, Senator Carpenter, Senator Higdon,
Here.
Senator Mills, Senator Smith, Senator Turner,
Here.
Senator Wheeler,
Here.
Senator Williams,
Somewhere.
Senator Wilson, Senator Yates,
Present.
Chairman Storm.
Present. Appears we have a quorum present and duly constituted to do business. Members, does anyone have any introductions of special guests you'd like to note? If not, first on our agenda is House Concurrent Resolution 5. Representative Bridges. House Concurrent Resolution 5 is a concurrent resolution expressing support of the Jones Act and commemorating its centennial anniversary, sponsored by Representative Bridges. If you could, and
Pinch hit as the primary co-sponsor.
absolutely. And if you don't mind, just identify yourself for the record and your guest, and you may proceed.
I am Stephen Rudy, state representative from the 1st House District, and with me is Miss Angela Grett from Ingram Barge.
Hi, Angela Grett, Director of Corporate Affairs with Ingram Barge Company.
Representative Bridges from Paducah, McCracken County, representing District 3, and Floor Leader Rudy and I have been arm wrestling over this because it's such a good resolution. But I will submit and yield to the gentleman from McCracken 1.
Senators, Mr. Chairman, thank you for allowing us to present House Concurrent Resolution 5 today, which recognizes the strong economic, national security implications of the Jones Act, a federal law that was passed in 1920, the foundation of the United States domestic maritime industry and support for our Kentucky maritime industry. Many people do not realize that Kentucky has hundreds of miles away from the nearest Great Lake or ocean, but we rank 5th amongst all states in per capita maritime jobs, with over 20,000 direct maritime jobs. Those jobs have an estimated impact of $5 billion annually on our economy. With that, we have Representative Bridges with me today, as well as Ms. Grett from Ingram, and Ms. Grett would like to present for a couple minutes on this importance of the Jones Act.
So good morning. Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman, for the opportunity to speak with you today. As I said, I'm Angela Grett, representing Ingram Barge. We are the largest in the Americas inland waterways carrier. We have 2,000 employees, 400 of whom live here in the Commonwealth. We operate more than 100 vessels on the waterways and own 4,000 barges, which accounts for 10% of the total U.S. flagged Jones Act fleet. So the Jones Act is very important to our industry, our business. It is the Merchant Marine. It's also referred to as the Merchant Marine Act of 1920. It states that all waterborne commerce moving between 2 points on the inland waterways or between 2 coastal U.S. ports must be carried on vessels that are built by American shipyards, utilizing American labor and steel, crewed by American citizens, and the boats must be owned by American operators. So this has been the law for 100 years and has protected our jobs, our industry, has ensured the safety of the quality of our ships and our barges, and it has been the regulatory backdrop for the way we operate and our many homegrown Kentucky competitors who make up this wonderful industry. So when we buy a vessel, we are making a 50-year investment. When we purchase or build a barge, we're making a 30-year investment. So this represents billions of dollars that we and others in our industry are making in the industry. So we're in it for the long haul.
Are there any questions from any members? We have one question.
One question.
Yes, sir.
I've been telling people we have more miles of navigable waterway than any state but Alaska. Is that in fact true? Besides Fifth and Jobs, we second in the number of miles of navigable waterway, inland waterway?
I don't know that statistic, but you have more than most of the inland states. So, yes.
I can confirm that is true.
Thank you very much.
Senator Wheeler had a question.
I just want to commend the sponsors for bringing this resolution. My grandfather spent his entire life working on the Ohio River, worked for Ingram Barge, Mr. Jones, and Crowns Corporation as a contractor, did a lot of work for them, and the Jones Act is a very valuable resource. I think it's the Port of Huntington, which is West Virginia and Kentucky, is one of the largest in the United States for inland traffic, and it's a very valuable resource to the Commonwealth of Kentucky, and I think it's well worth commemoration.
Thank you.
Senator Higdon had a question.
Yes, Angela, thank you for being here. And a few years ago, we were sent when the Senate had a retreat in Paducah. We had the opportunity to tour a tow and a barge operation. It was very impressive, and I was really impressed with what it takes to operate one of those tow boats and the time that they're gone and the shifts that they work. And again, it was very impressive. And I'm not sure if that was your company that we toured. I don't know, but it was
hope
it
it
was
was.
very impressive. Thank you.
Thank you.
Senator Mills has a question.
Yes, good morning. I'm over here left.
Okay.
Just wanted to echo the greatness of our rivers and the barge traffic. I live right on the Ohio River and see the barge traffic, and really didn't realize the immense amount of barge traffic that was on the river until you can see it where you live. And it is, I mean, hundreds of barges daily that go by my place. So appreciate all the economic growth and ability that your industry brings to Kentucky and to the surrounding states. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Senator Smith has a question.
Yeah, just a quick comment. As somebody that boats along those waterways quite often, it's entertaining to listen to some of your captains. Some of their banter back and forth, and some of the names is actually very colorful. But I always get tickled at some of the stuff, and very, very talented group of captains that you all have. But appreciate what you all do.
We saw a lot of that during the low water issues we had last year. So.
And if I could follow up, just to say, when you've got a lot of barges in tow for recreational vehicles, usually you will contact them via radio and let them know your location, where you're at on their point or starboard to approach them. But to go by them at speed and throw that wake on a lot of those joined barges is really, really dangerous for those guys. It creates a lot of turbulence for them to try to keep them straight, especially if you're coming into the lock system. You bring that with them, it just grows. But that may be something we need to help you all with, because you get a lot of very, very reckless boats around those barges, making their job much more difficult.
Yes. Thank you.
Seeing no further questions, we already have a motion and a second on the resolution. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Senator Berg. Senator Carpenter. Senator Higdon. Senator Mills. Senator Smith. Senator Turner. Senator Wheeler. Senator Williams. Senator Wilson. Senator Yates. Chairman Storm.
Aye. House Concurrent Resolution 5 is reported favorably with the expression of the opinion that same should pass. We have a motion for consent and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
What's
Ayes have it.
consent? Oh,
Thank you all so much.
thank you, Senators.
Representative Bridges, if you want to stay there and go ahead and present House Bill 21. which will be next on our agenda. We're going to jump around a little bit. I understand you have a committee to chair.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I believe we have an amendment on that, if you want to.
There's a committee sub on that.
Yes.
We have a motion on the committee sub. All in favor, say aye. You may proceed, and if you don't mind, just identify your guest for the record.
Yes, I'm Randy Bridges, representative from District 3 in McCracken. I have George Eklund here, and I'll let George introduce himself.
Yeah, my name is George Eklund. I work as the Education Advocacy Director for the Coalition for the Homeless in Louisville.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have before us today House Bill 21. It has been heard past the House last year. It's been heard over the interim by the Joint Transportation Committee between the House and the Senate, and we bring it to you again. I'm going to hit the highlights of it, and it does basically three things. It allows homeless children 16 to 17 years old to obtain a certified state ID. That does not give them a driver's license. It does not give them a real ID, but it does give them a state certified ID so that they can get their first job, so they can apply for colleges and things of that nature. The second thing it does is it allows Kentucky drivers that are homeless to associate with an accepted group, a nonprofit, a church, a homeless shelter, or something, that can be their permanent ID so that they can retain their driver's license, so that they can drive and hopefully keep their job, and transition them very temporarily into homelessness and out of that.
We adopted the committee sub, but thank you.
And I believe Senator Higdon can explain the committee sub if you don't mind.
Yes, Senator Hidden, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And what we did with the committee sub, we had another very good bill in the Senate that needed a home. And I appreciate you all allowing us to tag along. But I'll let Senator Yates explain the committee sub and the very good bill that we added to it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Senator. Well, first of all, both great bills together. We wrote an op-ed piece essentially endorsing this very same piece of legislation. My brother used to be the director of Salvation Army Center of Hope. I watched this problem with the inability to have an ID, just such a barrier to housing, to so many different aspects. So this is so long overdue and important. The added in here, the simple language, it was just, is the cabinet shall make all of the special military license plates in the section available for motorcycles owned or leased to eligible individuals. So what we did is, although under the license, it's also for our disabled military veterans for that license plate. So I think that all positive, and I appreciate you letting us bring this home together.
Senator Higdon had a question.
Thank you, Senator Yates. And I want to commend you all for working with me over the interim. You know, this bill came last year, and I think there was we just didn't fully understand it. The system works, but it took an extra year to get it, and I appreciate your patience with me for us to get to this point. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have a motion. Is there a second? So I have a motion, a second, on the bill as amended by the substitute. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Senator Berg.
Aye.
Senator Carpenter. Senator Higdon.
Aye.
Senator Mills.
Aye.
Senator Smith.
Aye.
Senator Turner.
Aye.
Senator Wheeler.
Aye.
Senator Williams.
Aye.
Senator Wilson. Senator Yates.
Yes.
Chairman Storm.
Aye. House Bill 21 is reported favorably with the expression of opinion that the same should pass with the committee substitute attached thereto. I believe there's also a title amendment.
Motion on title amendment.
Do I have a second? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. The ayes have it.
Motion for consent.
We have a motion second for consent. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and ladies and gentlemen.
Now we'll go to House Joint Resolution 7, a joint resolution designating honorary names for various roads and bridges, sponsored by Representative Pollock. If you could, just introduce yourself for the record, and you may proceed.
Representative Michael Sarge Pollock, District 51. Thank you all, Mr. Chair, committee, for this opportunity and honor to carry House Joint Resolution 7. It directs the Transportation Cabinet to designate the completed portion of the Campbellsville Bypass as the Representative John Bam Carney Highway. And so we all know John Bam Carney, when he came here in 2009, serving with the great big heart that he had in whatever he did, whether it was coaching, teaching, and obviously representing District 51.
Before we get to that, I think there's a proposed committee substitute on this. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Motion on the committee sub?
Do we have a second? We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. The committee substitute is adopted. Any questions by any members? Senator Higdon?
I just want to make a comment, Representative Pollock. Thank you for bringing this. And, this is something that we do that's very important in the General Assembly, naming roads for our heroes and those who have made a significant contribution to not only the state but our local communities. And I want to thank everyone who submitted a person to have a road named, that the little rules that we have in place to make sure that it's done right. And I appreciate everybody cooperating on that. It went fairly smooth, John. And we had to ask for a few to come up with the documentation that we requested. But thank you for bringing it forth. There's some very, very dear friends that with Bam Carney, and I know in the Senate we're going to have several that we honor this time. Thank you again, and thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Wilson had a comment or question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Bam Carney was a good friend, and he was chairman of the Education Committee in the House at the same time I was chair of Education in the Senate. We worked together on a lot of issues, and we would also go to SREB together, and I remember being on a panel with him. But it's just, it was a day that when we lost a great legislator. And so this is very appropriate. I appreciate you bringing it. Thank you.
Senator Smith?
Yeah, just a quick comment on BAM. It's I think I was one of the last representatives or legislators to actually be with him before he had gone into the hospital. But we were at a concert together, and in the middle of the concert, we had a group from Louisville that was talking about a project that was very desperate to them. And typical BAM, we wound up missing most of the concert and going off to the side and working on helping with the project with this. And I just think that's typical. And we were there just casually with our families, and were made aware of an issue, and then the next thing you know, we're off to the side, and I can just still see him taking notes on this paper. But true statesman, and I've said this before, I mean, my father always said, and it's true, a statesman's something you cannot call yourself. It only matters if other people call you that, because you've earned it. And I will say that Bam Carney was a statesman for Kentucky, for our Commonwealth. So very happy to sponsor this and appreciate you doing this work.
Senator Higdon?
Yes, just a little further explanation of this. Representative Carney, every year we rotate between the House and the Senate on who starts the road naming bill. And each year that we do it, there be one individual that's selected that the road naming bill is in their name. And of course, Representative Carney is the one that we selected this time. There's actually 41 individuals that will be honored with a road naming this year. And in the Senate, we have Senator C.B. Emery will be mentioned in the Senate on the Senate by a Senate resolution. So again, it's we're not just one name, which that's the one. Representative Carney will be the one whose name is on it. So Thank you all. Thank the members of the committee, and thank you again, Representative Pollock.
I entertain a motion on the resolution.
Motion.
I have a motion and a second as amended by the substitute. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Senator Berg. Senator Carpenter. Senator Higdon.
Aye.
Senator Mills.
Aye.
Senator Smith. Senator Turner. Senator Wheeler. Senator Williams.
Aye.
Senator Wilson. Senator Yates. Chairman Storm.
Aye. House Joint Resolution 7 is reported favorably with the expression of opinion that same should pass. With the committee substitute attached thereto, given the nature of this, I will not entertain a motion for consent. Thank you.
Thank you,
It
Mr.
needs to be
Chairman.
discussed on the floor.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is House Bill 320, an act relating to commercial driver's licensing sponsored by Representative Freeland. If you would, just identify yourself for the record and you may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. House Bill 320 is a bill. It passed through the House 97-0, and it's a simple bill but an important bill. It has to do with CDL skilled drivers and the testing, and it basically adds language that would allow the state to test out-of-state applicants who possess all the valid operator's license, commercial driver's instructions permit, and has complied with all necessary requirements to be able to take the skills test here in Kentucky. And the cost would be...
We have a motion and second on the bill. Seeing no questions, Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Senator Berg. Senator Carpenter. Okay. Senator Carpenter. Senator Higdon.
Aye.
Senator Mills.
Aye.
Senator Smith. Senator Turner. Senator Wheeler. Senator Williams.
Aye.
Senator Wilson. Senator Yates. Chairman Storm.
Aye. Oh, Senator Berg wants to recognize. Can you go ahead and say that for the record? Senator Berg, would you like to cast an aye vote? Thank you. House Bill 320 is reported favorably with the expression of the opinion that same should pass.
Motion on consent, for consent.
We have a motion for consent and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. Be placed on consent.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And then last on our agenda, I believe, is House Bill 135, an act relating to autonomous vehicles sponsored by Representative Bray. I believe that there is a committee sub on this.
Motion on sub.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Say aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. The committee sub is adopted. You may proceed. Oh. All right.
If you will, Mr. Chairman, I'll explain the sub before they get into the, basically what the sub does. It just says on the autonomous vehicles that are allowed on the road, but you'd have to have a licensed driver behind the wheel in case they had to take control of the vehicle. That's basically what the committee sub says.
So, Representative Josh Bray, 71st House District.
James Higdon, I'm a principal at MML&K Government Solutions, and here representing the Autonomous Vehicle Industry Association. Thank you.
So, the bill you have before you relates to autonomous vehicles, and that's something that some people aren't familiar with. I know whenever I talk to a lot of members in the House, it kind of got looked at like I had three heads because we're talking about, cars without drivers. But the fact is, 19 states have already adopted this legislation or very similar legislation to this. As we speak, they are deployed in Texas, California, Arizona, Florida, Tennessee has passed this, West Virginia has. So we've got some surrounding neighbors. And so what these autonomous vehicles do is they are very safe. They are tested beyond belief. Millions of miles on the odometer. They are programmed to run, whether it's routes or you can hail them like an Uber. They are really, this is, I mean, as much as it's a transportation bill, this is an economic development bill, because the potential for this in Kentucky is outstanding. What the bill does is it requires the vehicles, one, follow all safety regulations, all traffic regulations. Two, it requires them to be operated in a state to where if something goes wrong, let's say a sensor fails, so they're rear-ended, there's a massive snowstorm, tornado comes through, whatever it is, they have to be able to pull over and maintain a minimal risk condition. Three, law enforcement has the opportunity to review a law enforcement plan so that they know how to interact with these vehicles, so that, let's say there's a complaint or an accident, so that they know what's going on. We have, on the House side, we'd made changes at the request of the Trial Attorneys Association. You know, they had some questions and concerns. We had taken care of those. So what this does is it allows the regulatory framework to be developed and designed by the Department of Transportation, and I believe that's the gist of the bill there.
Thank you, Representative. And far be it from me to add to that those prepared remarks, but do want to publicly thank you for your leadership on this issue. Senator Higdon, if I may, just acknowledging the committee sub, I've been asked by the Autonomous Vehicle Industry Association to read a brief statement specific to the requirement that a driver remain in the car. So if you'll indulge me working from my phone at this point. This is from Jeff Farah. He is the Executive Director of the Autonomous Vehicle Industry Association. Autonomous vehicles have the great potential to enhance the safety of Kentucky's roads while supporting existing jobs and creating new ones. More than half the states in the country authorize autonomous vehicle operation without a driver, and we are seeing this technology get deployed today to improve road safety and to solve our most pressing economic challenges. It is therefore very disappointing to see a provision get added to the bill at this time that would work to extinguish those potential benefits and make Kentucky an extreme outlier among the other states. We strongly oppose this change to the bill and will continue to work with all stakeholders to achieve a framework in Kentucky that provides for fully autonomous vehicle operation. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Representative Bray? I think Senator Higdon has one.
Well, thank you, Representative Bray and Jimmy James.
No relation.
Well, we had an agreement. I'm Jimmy Higdon. He's supposed to be James, but he slips up sometime, and it does cause a little confusion
every now and
from
then,
time to time. Yeah, but anyway, it's all good. Thank you all for being here, and you know, this is big deal. This is probably as I guess a drastic of a change as we had back when the Model T replaced the horse and buggy. And I remember a story somebody told one time about an old blacksmith and his son working and pounding out a horseshoe, and their best customer went by in a Model T and honked his horn and waved. And the old man looked at his son and he said, son, these times sure are a-changing. And so we're back there again. I guess we never left that, but and there's a lot of issues to work out on this. A lot of acceptance and concerns but that's that's why the committee sub of some concerns that I've expressed to you going forward. But this is a process. This is only one stop along the way, and so. Appreciate y'all being here, and I didn't have a question. I just wanted to make that comment, and thank you all for your work. I know you worked very hard on this.
Thank you, Senator.
Senator Berg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As far as liability coverage, that's a really big concern of mine. So, like, we recently entertained a bill where if an intoxicated driver kills a parent and that child has no support, that intoxicated driver is now responsible for child support. Is your manned or unmanned vehicle subject to all the laws and restrictions of an impaired driver in this state or an unimpaired driver in this state?
So the autonomous vehicles can't be impaired. So I don't. So they follow all existing traffic and safety guidelines in Kentucky. I don't know. I honestly can't answer you whether it would fall under the impaired driver because they're not an impaired driver. Do you know what I'm saying? We do require. So one of the things we did require was we increased the minimum liability policy to $1 million for all these vehicles, and $1 million for property damage minimum for each vehicle. That we increase those policies.
Does that $1 million cover healthcare expenses in case of you run into 3 people by accident? You're going to surpass that $1 million in a second. Is that per individual? Is it like at a 1-1-1, or what are you covering there?
The intention is for that $1 million to cover that accident in that event that it happened. Oh. To be clear, the construct of the bill is to identify all applicable motor vehicle statutes, and if the autonomous vehicle meets a very rigorous and internationally recognized engineering standard, it is granted all the privileges afforded to a human driver, but also the responsibilities required of a human driver. And certainly throughout the committee process, we had a lengthy discussion in the House Transportation Committee about these very phenomenon. It was clear from that discussion that we needed to, in advance of that committee rather, better define who the operator of these vehicles were, and that was a very clear and constructive conversation with the Kentucky Justice Association that we resolved in the House sub, and then went further in a House floor amendment to try to address that very phenomenon. But to be clear, this construct does not disturb at all in any way the existing liability construct that we have in the Commonwealth.
Senator Yates.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, let me tell you thank you for taking the time. I know this is one that it's been a long time just educating, going through round and round. I believe that this is the future, that we're moving forward. We know that. We know the other states are moving forward. And I want to make sure that Kentucky continues to, if not lead, not fall behind like we do in so many things. But my first number one obligation will always be public safety. And so that's our concern in looking into it. And so I know that dealing with and working with the KJA and making sure that there's some $1 million limits. I wish that we had other limits that were much higher in other areas. I think our families' kids would be a lot safer. I'm concerned, and part of me is I wanted to make sure, because we know we're not ready. We know that the technology has so many tweaks to work out of and things to work out, whether it's from a legal standpoint, but also, we know that it's coming. So I think that the sub makes me feel a lot better that we have an operator behind the wheel, and that was really important to me. I'm reading through, though, and I think to my colleague's question is, I think she was talking about if that operator behind the wheel, what if that operator behind the wheel is intoxicated? Because the idea is that in the event something goes wrong, the human takes over, right? The other question is, how long does it take? Say that every technology is different. How long does it take them to be able to take over the wheel? Like if Tesla, for instance, you got to touch it so often, right? And then you got to steer. So I still have, and maybe it's the lawyer in me that's looking through it. I just want to make sure, and I know we're a little bit of ways away. So even if this winds up being a study or whatnot, I think we got to keep moving forward. And I know we're not just unleashing and cutting a ribbon. But these are the things that I still would feel much more comfortable working out before we pass. And again, I just want to say thank you for continuing to work with us, educate and improve this.
Okay, so I apologize. I didn't understand your question, apparently. So if the driver behind the wheel who is required to take over, if they are intoxicated, then yes, they would fall under the framework of the law, because all applicable traffic safety, all of that still applies. This doesn't change any of that construct. As far as, you know, you had mentioned kind of the Tesla, and I want to say these aren't Teslas. Teslas do not meet these standards. These vehicles go so far above and beyond. So they're regulated by the NTSB, the National Transportation Safety Board, and they have minimum requirements on what these can and can't do. They have to be, I believe is it 4 and 5 or 5 and 6?
Level 4 and 5 autonomy, according to SAE international standards.
Right, and Teslas do not. That is not this. And as far as the safety, yeah, you're absolutely right. If there's a driver behind the wheel, then they would be required to take over under the committee sub immediately. They are responsible for the vehicle. You know, Kentucky already has existing. We have pilot. Is it pilot program where you'll have a semi driver driving the first vehicle. The vehicle behind it will be autonomous. There's a driver in the vehicle or someone in the vehicle, oftentimes not driving. They're just in the vehicle. And then the vehicle behind that has the same. So currently we allow two the platooning is already existing. That is existing law. That's in place now. I passed a semi with nobody in there, and I wondered what the heck's going on. So I mean, I have seen that. That's ongoing now. But this does not change any of that.
Senator Wheeler had a question.
I want to thank the sponsors. I mean, you all have really come to the table to work with people on that, and I do appreciate that fact. But I would join my colleague, Senator Yates. I mean, this is, and Senator Hicks, this is a big, big, big change. And I guess I'm a little uncomfortable given that I think there's still some issues to work out, that trying to cram this into a short session when maybe a longer session might be more conducive to a broader program. But going to my colleague Senator Burke's comment, I mean, I understand maybe an autonomous vehicle can't be impaired in the traditional sense, but you know, what if it gets a virus that causes it to act out erratically on the roadway? I mean, you know, maybe a computer virus is to an autonomous vehicle what alcohol is to a human being, or maybe even a prescription medication that a person takes that does not think it's going to make him intoxicated, but does. They're still, you know, liable for following the rules of the road. How would such a vehicle, I mean, you know, if you're impaired in driving, you're strictly liable for any damage that you may cause. Is that the case with autonomous vehicles?
Yes. They operate under the same framework as a driver vehicle.
So they're strictly liable, so is what you're saying.
There is no change in the existing statutory structure that puts its thumb on the scale of any liability. I know that's not what you're saying. It would still require an examination of the facts to properly determine fault. But to try to answer a specific question about what if a virus, it's actually a great question. And so much of these questions are inherent in these definitions, which are critical in this bill. The minimal risk condition, which is defined in the bill, is that series of circumstances in which the vehicle identifies either its own systems are failing or circumstances beyond its control that it recognizes as impeding its ability to successfully execute the driver task. Part of the reason why a construct like this is important, despite how big it is and despite how short the session is, Kentucky statutes are completely silent on AVs today. And so we are attempting to create a framework with these minimum standards. This is, you know, they're not ownerless, right? This requires having insurance. It requires proper title. It requires proper registration. It requires the ability for that vehicle to extract itself from a suboptimal situation. So to best answer your question, These vehicles are continuously monitored. They are self-monitoring, and when they are incapable of performing that full driving task, they find their way safely off of Kentucky's roadways, and that is written into the bill within that minimum risk condition.
Senator Turner had a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate what you all are doing also, but I'm, I guess, one of the old schoolers. When we say all other states do it, because all other states smoke marijuana don't mean Kentucky has to. And we don't have to fall in line. We don't have to fall in line with that. So I get bothered with that. And then the gentleman that you just read his statement by, it's like him telling us what we have to do. And I get offended by that because this is a study project. We were told by TELSA that theirs were going to be okay and all the other elected, we see wrecks. It's just such a catastrophic idea, though, if you're going down the mountain over there in North Carolina where that thing's 7 miles long and all it takes is something to happen to one of them and you could have, hundreds of people killed. And we're trying to put that on a Kentucky roadway. Us legislators owe the responsibility to make sure that that doesn't happen. And if this is a new idea like TELSA, all those guys that went to the moon, I always thought they were safe. But we were watching when those 7 blew up and died. But they were told that aircraft was pure safe, just like you all are telling us today. And I'm afraid that we're just a little bit jumpy, a little bit hurriedly, trying to get something done. And I, as a CDL operator, hauling equipment sometimes that's got 40 tons behind me, knows that if something happened to that truck just autonomously, it can't cover every scenario that an eye is looking could to go one way to keep from killing somebody, because it's not going to be, it's always going to be controlling. It's that other vehicle that hits it and causes that wreck. See, that's what's got me bothered. And I believe that this needs some more study in the interim to make sure we work all these things out. And also, I believe a CDL vehicle requires $1 million worth of liability. It's what I've got on all of mine. And as the good senator said, $1 million, if somebody's got a catastrophic injury and you've got a big truck involved, it's going to do numerous injuries to numerous people. And the biggest problem I have with it is that not having a man or a woman under control of it. You got split-second decisions to make that electronic thing can't, if it's go right or left, because it can't see what's on its right or what on its left to make that good judgment call. And when it's an 18-wheeler loaded, time is of the essence. So I appreciate what you're doing. Look forward to working with you, but I think this needs to be put in a study during the interim and let all of us get a good real insight and work out all the bugs to make sure that we're satisfied that it's pure safe, because it's our responsibility as legislators turning these things loose on the public. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Smith.
Yes, just a quick comment. This is coming. We already participate in it probably more than a lot of people know. I mean, if you get in an airplane, that pilot's probably not flying that airplane. And so you probably touch down and probably take off, but once you get up there, they'll put it in autopilot. And so we're seeing it. And I love the idea that Kentucky is going to be playing a role in emerging technology. I, like many of my colleagues up here, have concerns as well. And one of my concerns is displaced labor costs. And the last thing we need is to lose more jobs in our areas. So that's always going to be a concern for me. But on the other side of the technology, the amount of employees that goes into putting a platoon together, from the capacitors and the chips and the dashboards and all the stuff that go into the computer aspect and technology, will create a lot of jobs on its own. So if you wanted to build one of those in Eastern Kentucky, and then we might revisit your platooning deal. But it is coming, and I appreciate the work that you all put into it. There's going to be a lot of advantages for it, and efficiencies and savings. And we all know that most of the products that we get, probably most of the products in this room, probably got to wherever you purchase them from via some sort of a transport vehicle. And so Kentucky wants to be in the lead. We want to be in the forefront and not follow the past. But I think there's still some work that we may need to do on this one to be able to tie it to the aspect of some jobs, to pick up the tech side of what platooning will actually create, because there will be a lot of extra stuff with that. But going in there and removing the drivers, for us, creates create some difficulty.
Representative Bray, we have 3 witnesses that signed up to testify as well. We have Bill, and Steve. If you 3 want to come up and introduce yourselves for the record and keep your comments concise, we have other members that will need to get to other committees.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Bill Londrigan, President, Kentucky State AFL-CIO, representing 100,000 working families across Kentucky.
Bill Miller. Bill Miller, Teamsters Local 89 Political Director.
Steve Ruff, car haul, truck driver, 89 also, Teamsters Local 89. Thank you.
Please proceed.
Let me begin just by observing that there is considerable uncertainty among the General Assembly as to the need for this far-reaching bill that has had no real study or analysis. In fact, HB 135 only garnered 62 yes votes in the House, with 17 Republicans voting no. Until HB 135 was introduced, the subject of autonomous driving systems was frankly not much on our radar. Sure, we heard about it, but we knew that certain automated driving features had already been in effect. But the subject of fully autonomous driving systems was something that seemed far off. But with House Bill 135, we had to learn more about it. One of the things I did was, of course, go on the internet and look at some materials, and found a study that was just put out by the U.S. Department of Transportation in January 2021. The word uncertainty appears in this study over and over again. Quote, the timeline for the development of a level 4 or 5 capabilities is highly uncertain. Later, there's inherent uncertainty in predicting how an emerging technology may affect jobs and workers in the future. The actual trajectory of employment is complex and difficult to predict, and certainly considerable uncertainty exists when attempting to predict the impacts of driving automation on employment, something that has not necessarily been given enough attention to has been the effect on the workers. Other groups have not been in accord with this move to autonomous vehicles. The Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association wrote to the U.S. Department of Transportation, while some entities are eager to push forward and rapidly remove any regulatory roadblocks to highly automated commercial vehicles, the Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association believes that this would be an ill-fated and imprudent approach with possibly devastating consequences upon owner-operators, professional drivers, and the motoring public. Again, there are many unanswered questions concerning the influence of HACVs on the workforce and overall economy. Even the National League of Cities casts doubt on this approach. It says, there will also be others who suffer in a society where drivers are no longer needed. Delivery drivers, for-hire transportation providers, and taxi drivers, transit operators, and large equipment operators could also be vulnerable. In some communities across America, driving professions are a stronghold of the local economy, and eliminating those jobs would be equivalent to a town's factory closing or the main industry collapsing. That is from the National League of Cities. In reviewing the National NCSL, National Conference of State Legislators database, we find that there are 17 states right now considering this legislation. And when you look and review those bills, they're all different. There's variations on this theme going across the country. So that's one thing to take into consideration. What is exactly going on around there? There has been no discussion, consideration, research, or in-depth review of how the other states are considering autonomous vehicles. We just hear generalizations. I will add and emphasize that the short and long-term impact on our state's economy have been left out completely. All we have heard in this regard are vague references to the creation of 5 jobs for each one that we lose. So admittedly, the proponents envision a massive disruption of the trucking, passenger bus, and delivery occupations as a result of the implementation of automated driving systems, particularly SAE Automation Level 5. There has been no discussion about the impacts of phasing out thousands upon thousands of good-paying jobs. No discussion about what will happen to the thousands of drivers who lose their jobs due to this technology, whether that be 1, 2, 5, 6, 10 years from now. What happens to their health care, their pensions, and the tax base of these workers? Are these considerations not worthy of discussion or consideration? Or are we to take the word of those in the industry exclusively about the impacts of implementing this technology? should we be initiating a study, doing our due diligence, and bringing stakeholders really together to learn more and fashion a rational proposal to protect the interests of our hardworking men and women in the transportation sector? There's no fiscal impact related to this legislation. There's a minimal fiscal impact, but LRC should have a complete fiscal impact. While the committee sub is an improvement, it does not mitigate our overall underlying objections to House Bill 135, and we ask that you vote no.
If you don't mind, just keep the time in mind.
Yes,
to
sir.
speak.
I've started striking paragraphs already. The committee's already endorsed, has already asked so many good questions that you've eliminated a lot of my talking points. So, again, my name is Bill Miller. I'm the political director of Teamsters Local 89 in Louisville, Kentucky. The Teamsters represent roughly 25,000 working people across Kentucky. A lot of those are transportation industry jobs. Our members are Republicans, Democrats, Independents, and others. We are asking you to vote no on House Bill 135. The committee sub does a great job and makes a nice step forward, but there's still a lot of issues that need to be discussed and looked at. Senator Turner brought up the point of moving to a study during the interim. We think that's a great idea. The Teamsters would be happy to host any legislator who wants to come and ride in one of our big trucks or take a look at it, see what a pre-trip, post-trip, mid-trip inspection looks like. We're planning to set up an event for hopefully sometime in June when folks can come to Louisville and see what is really entailed in driving these vehicles. There's a number of issues I was going to raise up. The liability has been discussed at some length. In Connecticut, Tennessee, Washington, they all have liabilities of $5 million for liability insurance. That's according to the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety. There should be public-facing and public reporting websites for any incidents or accidents that occur with these vehicles. The public should know they're out there. They should know that what they're driving with and what they're driving next to. Some recent polling done in Indiana and Tennessee shows that voters are very scared of these vehicles and not as supportive of them. To the tune of...
We're going to lose we need to vote. Sorry, guys.
You're fine.
Do we have a motion on the bill as amended by the committee substitute? We have a motion and a second. A motion on the bill as amended by the committee substitute. Madam Secretary, please call the roll. We have a first and a second.
Senator Byrd.
Very quickly, I'm going to explain my no vote, please. I feel really conflicted because we have to move forward. We have to accept new technology. The world is going to change around us. And if we don't change with it, we're going to be left behind. On the other hand, I mean, $1 million liability to me is grossly suboptimal. And I have concerns. I think my constituents have concerns. I think we need to understand this better before I can cast a yes vote. So thank you.
Senator Carpenter. Senator Higdon.
Aye.
Senator Mills.
Cast my aye vote and explain real quick. I'm comfortable moving forward. Understand what you guys are talking about. I do think there's, we do have a labor shortage, so this is going to help address some of the labor shortage that you were addressing. But I'm comfortable and want Kentucky to be on the cutting edge of new technology, so I vote aye.
Senator Smith. Senator Turner. Senator Wheeler. No. Senator Williams.
Aye.
Senator Wilson. Aye. Senator Yates.
Thank you. First of all, thank you guys for your testimony, each of you, and I appreciate you working with us on it. I think that we continue to move forward with technology and advances. I would love to be able to work with a study over the summer, working with it. I think the biggest thing we're missing is working with the National Legislative Conference, all the legislators of other places. We meet, we go to it, and we break away. There should be best practices throughout the United States. There's no reason that we got to try to reinvent the wheel with our piecemeal legislation. And so I think that's to be the better approach, the safer approach, and probably the better economic impact approach. So I'm a no vote for today.
Chairman Storm.
I'm going to cast an aye vote for today. I think the comment by Senator Wheeler about hacking and things of that nature, viruses, that was one of my biggest concerns. But for today's purposes, I am voting aye. believe the vote count is 5-5, if I'm not mistaken, Madam Secretary. So that matter is 5-5. Or was it? You got 5 no's.
Who's the 6 yes?
There's 10 members. It was 5-5. Think the House Bill 135 fails. We got a motion to adjourn in a second. Oh, Senator Higdon would like to make a comment.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. And this potentially is our last meeting this session. I want to thank our staff, Dana, Christina, Ashley, and the boss, John. Thank you all for your dedication and your support of this committee this session. We certainly appreciate you and want to just publicly thank you. And a round of applause.
Meeting is adjourned.